here with the one, the only, the legend, pioneering figure of MMA, UFC Hall of Famer, Mr. Ken Shamrock. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Where are you?
I'm in Reno, Nevada.
Lovely, lovely, superb. Right, well, listen, I'm going to go straight into it. You've headlined over 15 main events, co-events in UFC, Pride FC. You set numerous MMA pay-per-view records, which we're going to come on to. What I'd like to do is take a little step back, in fact, a big step back, shine a torch a little bit on your childhood and the incredible route to martial arts. So, tell us about where you grew up, your family environment, and we'll start with that.
Yeah, that's that's not a it's a sad one because I grew up in Georgia, Macon, Georgia. Uh, didn't have much of a family. I was on the street a lot, even at 5 years old, running up and down the sidewalks, nobody watching me. It was bad. Ended up moving to Napa, California, around probably 8 or 9. Got stabbed at 10 years old. Ended up locked up in juvenile hall. Once I got into juvenile hall, I failed 6 or 7 different group homes and worked boys camps, and ended up at a place called the Shamrock Boys Home, where at 13 years old, I ended up there. That's where I started to learn, how to become a kid, what it was like to be a kid. But I had to learn to vent my frustrations and anger into something positive because I was a very violent kid. And so I remember Bob Shamrock put me in football and wrestling in high school. Obviously, I was a very, very angry kid and I wanted to hurt everybody. But I figured out that I could be relevant and important as long as I knew what the rules were. And so I learned the rules, and then I went out and just started hurting people and just wanted to just get that anger out. It wasn't directed at anybody because I didn't like them. It was directed at everybody because they didn't like me. I didn't like where I was at. And so I just was out there just trying to destroy everything. And fortunately for me, I became relevant. I even got scholarships my senior year. So sports pretty much gave me an opportunity to take all the things that had gone wrong to me and the anger and hate that I had towards myself and the world, and be able to generate it and put it into something that made me popular. That was my kid life,
I,
though.
I believe that that you had an interest in a number of sports. You were naturally very talented at sports. What other sports did you engage in as a kid?
Everything. I played basketball. Obviously, I didn't play for high school like that because I was wrestling and playing football. But I was naturally being able to play basketball. I played city league, even in tournaments where I traveled with a tournament team in basketball. Softball, I would hit balls out of the park all the time. Even played for a semi-pro baseball team in Reno, or not Reno, but in Susanville that had a semi-team there. I played 1 year for a semi-pro team, just walked on and played with no experience and just played. Again, like I said, I loved everything. I played everything, did everything. And I was pretty much naturally because I was competitive at everything, and I wanted to literally destroy anybody that was in front of me. Obviously, those things changed as I got to be an adult. But as a kid, my success was based on my anger, my frustration, and hate towards the world and myself.
Wow, wow, that's when you're fighting yourself, that's the hardest opponent on the planet, I'm guessing.
It is because nothing's ever good enough. Like even when I was getting patted on the back and I was popular, I still hated the idea that my mom was never around. My dad was never around. I was left alone. I was put away in juvenile halls. And nobody cared about me. I was just a number. It just all of that. And it just made me a really vicious kid.
I believe at the age of 10, you ran away from home for the first time, but you were stabbed by another kid while you were on the run. Is that true?
Yes. And that's how I ended up getting locked up. Best thing that probably happened to me because I got caught. I was living out of a car at the time, 10 years old. And people think that's crazy, but it's true. I ran away and I was down about 3 or 4 blocks from the house. and I was in this abandoned car, and I was robbing stores and kids' lunch money and strong arm robbery because I put a knife to these kids' neck. And this is 10 years old. It's just crazy. I mean, when you think about it, people just don't understand that that happens. It's real. They go, no, you're too young. Even at 5 years old, 6 or 7 years old, people don't believe that they can be running around the street. Yes, they can, because the door gets left open and you just walk out. And that's something that happened to me, and nobody's watching it. So I know for a lot of people who live somewhat a normal life, they don't understand how that's even possible. But trust me, you ask somebody that comes from that kind of neighborhood, the ghetto, where it's very, very low living, they'll tell you, no, it happens all the time.
Well, so at age 13, your stepfather kicked you out of your home. You and your brothers went your own way. How did you live and how did you survive?
Yeah, I didn't get kicked out. We ran away. All my two older brothers, I don't know my old. I mean, I know them. Obviously, I never grew up with them. We don't really see each other a whole lot because we never grew up with each other. Because of that, like we ran away. We ended up in the lockup, and they went their way. I know my one brother did 3 terms in prison, had a life sentence in California. Um, Ended up getting released because they set in a new rule where you can't be tried and convicted of older crimes, like the 3 strike rule. Those are no longer in effect, and that's what he got put away because it was his fourth time, and he was doing life, so they released him after I think he was 16 years or something like that. Prior to that, he did 2 other stints. One was for 7, and another was for 4, I believe, 4 years. So he spent most of his life in prison. And my oldest brothers, he was deep into, some heavy stuff. So again, like those are, man, I know them. Like I know them, and I talk to them every 6 or 8 months. But we just don't have a relationship because we grew up separate from one another. My life story is like it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's crazy. And anytime anybody comes in and wants to do my story, they ended up they just can't. I mean, it's not something you can do in one film because there's just it's just a story after story after story, and it's not like. And the thing when I tell people is like, it's not like when I tell you, hey, I broke my neck, and then people talk, oh my goodness, you did this after you broke your neck, you did that. I was in, they clamped me down. I didn't move. I had brackets on my head and bolts in my head. I have pictures of it that show I broke my neck because I hear a lot of people say that. And yet you don't see anything that proves it. Everything that I say in my life that people can't believe is proof because there's files that prove I was in juvenile hall when I was at 10 years old. There's files that showed how many group homes I was in. So all these things that I say and that I truly believe is the Rocky story is real. And it's just whenever people get into it, there's just so much to it that they don't know how to put it together.
Yeah, that's it's certainly if you haven't had the autobiography done, then it's certainly worth penning without a doubt because there is so much content in there. When I was refreshing my memory of your life, what you've been through, and let's almost forget here for a moment what people know you for primarily in terms of the fighter, because there's 2 different fights that you've had in your life, and without a doubt, the years building up to you becoming famous in the ring and everything that came with that. There's certainly a totally different story there as well. I mean, you've literally just touched on it there. There's everything from, I believe, stolen cars to even yourself, sort
Yeah.
of, robbing people at knife point, and then not to mention the number of care homes that you went through and serving time in as you said, sort of a juvie hall as well. So, but positively, um, after having gone through countless homes, at the age of 14, you meet a man called Bob Shamrock. Talk to me about Bob.
Yeah, at 13 years old, I ended up at the Shamrock Boys Home. And that was actually the first time that I'd gone to a group home where it was like living in a fantasy world because all the other homes I went to, the beds had stains all over them, the walls had holes in them. I mean, it was just atrocious. It was just gross. But when I went to the Shamrock Boys Home, we pulled into these iron gates and a big old flagpole out front, this big old oak door in front, and there's this big mansion house sitting there. Literally, we thought like we turned into the wrong driveway because this can't be a group home for kids. This is where rich people live. And sure enough, it was the home. And I remember walking into this home and we opened the door. Bob Shamrock opens the door, and you don't see that. And because most group homes you go to, they're house parents. They go in for 8 hours, and another set of house parents come in. And so these people don't even own the house; they're just working shifts. Well, this was his home. This was literally Bob and Dee Dee's home, and it was a mansion. I remember walking in, and they had a big old this grand piano. It was white. It was beautiful. They had these silk carpets. I mean, literally silk carpets. They had this open beam ceiling was sky high, and this chimney that had this bricks that went up to the throughout the roof, and big old fireplace, and this awning, and just unbelievable looking. And then I remember upstairs there was video games and pool tables, and it was like, what is happening? We walked into the dining room, and it was like it was 18 to 20 different, I think, seats, and they all had pewter goblets and linen napkins put in them with silverware next to it. The table was set. It looked like this Roman, table, and it was unbelievable. I just like pinched myself. And I remember he basically sent the probation officer over to the cook. They had a cook, and got him some coffee and cookies, and she was entertaining. And he set us at this bar that had like sodas and candy and all this stuff that was out there in this bar area. And he started talking to us and telling us like, hey, wherever you've done before and whatever has happened in your life, it's a new change. You have an opportunity to change the direction of your life if you choose to. And the key word was choose to. This file, and he literally had our file, says these mean nothing other than it gives me information on how I need to approach you and how to help you, which has never happened. This has never happened before. Most of the time we get shoved off with some peer kid, and he takes us and shows us all the bad things we can do. Literally, this is the owner of the home, Bob Shamrock, has this mansion, and he's telling us, I'm going to help you get through these problems. And literally explained to us, because that's just all talk anyway. You hear people say it all the time. And he said, every one of you have some sort of situation that you're going through, whether you either inner anger or outer anger. If like with me, I was more of the outer, where if somebody looked at me wrong or said so, I'd punch them. I'd immediately start fighting. I was outward. Whereas some of the other guys would be more drugs, cutting themselves. They were more intro with the anger. And so, and that's how he was able to affect me with sports, because he knew that outer anger I need somewhere to vent it other than on other people. If I was going to do it on other people, why not do it in a sports, and it's in a contained area where you can understand the rules and go as hard as you want. And with some of these other guys, with drawing pictures or singing or rapping or whatever it is that helped them vent, he was being able to show them also how they can release some of that anger through creativity. And so I think that was the biggest difference in that home was that we weren't just a number. He literally cared about making sure that kids had an opportunity to be able to make themselves feel better through doing things that were productive while they're angry.
Amazing. I believe you adopted, because you were actually Ken Kilpatrick up to this point, and I believe that you adopted his surname of Shamrock in his honor, and then from that point forth became Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, at the age of 18, I ended up getting adopted. I know he tried to adopt me when I was 14, 15 years old. My biological mother wouldn't do it, and which was I didn't understand it, because even though I know she loved me, and she just didn't know how to raise any of us, and she had bad marriages that were just violent, and she had her troubles, but she couldn't raise us. And I just, even to this day, I know she loved me, but if I was that, I would say please, because I knew I couldn't do it, and I don't want them to fail. And that's what happened to my other two brothers, was that they didn't get to a place where they could change. And they went down the wrong roads and ended up getting into a lot of trouble, and a lot of bad things happened to them. And, it just didn't work out 100% for them. Whereas I feel like I got an opportunity because I was able to get out of that and be able to start my life over. And it helped me tremendously be the man I am today. If I didn't, and I had to go back to that same environment, I'm not sure I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm not sure I'm even alive.
Yeah, wow, unbelievable. Yet another twist and a turn of the life before you even really known. It's sensational. Now talking about other little things that not a lot of people are going to know. So at college, you qualify for state championships in wrestling, but as you do,
No, no,
you
no,
break
high
your
school, high school,
at
high
high
school.
school, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was high school, and that I was undefeated my senior year, and I beat two state champions, one at the 195 and one at the 185.
Wow, wow. And how old were you at this point?
I was 17.
17. Wow. But I believe you broke your neck in practice before a competition.
Yeah, it was I literally just got done with our season. I was undefeated, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that we didn't have a lot of people coming into practice at that time. And so normally you have the freshmen come in, they put the match together, they tape them, they clean them. But we didn't have that. And so I remember going in and I had a few guys coming in and helping me get ready for this big tournament. And obviously, we start out and the coach is screaming at me, you better get going. I was kind of being lazy. And so I remember going in for a lazy shot. I go to shoot, and next thing I know, I'm laying on the mat. I jammed my neck. The guy sprawled on me, end up pushing my chin down to my sternum, and just snapped everything. I remember laying on the mat, thinking to myself, "Okay, get up." And I'm face down. I go, "Get up," and I can't get up. I mean, I'm literally standing there, and I just like get up, and I can't. I'm just literally numb. And I remember probably about 2-3 minutes in, everybody starts to realize, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And me, I'm like, well, I'm just afraid because like I've never felt this, right? Like I can't move. And I remember it was probably an hour, 45 minutes or so. Ambulance comes in, put me in the Star. I think it was a Star Wars where they clamp you down so you can't move, like a sandwich, and then they put me in the ambulance. They drove me 2.5 hours to a place called Redding, California, where a specialist there did some X-rays and literally came in. And I remember I'm in this bed at the place, even in the hospital. You go in, and they still had me strapped down flat, and I had to, in order to see a TV, I had to look through a mirror, even though I was still face up. But I couldn't sit up. I couldn't do anything. Lay flat and strapped down. And I remember looking through this mirror, and as he put up this chart up there, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know how that works, but it was crooked. It did not look good. And I remember the words that came out of his mouth, just, man, and not truly understanding it, but understanding it, kind of like you don't want to understand it. Whereas, like, he basically said he broke his neck. And, there's doctor's terminology. But basically, in my mind, I knew what he basically said, that there's this thing, broke. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I remember just like verbally saying something and not really understanding what I'm saying, but just wanting to understand more by saying to the doctor when he's explaining this to Bob Shamrock, I remember saying this out loud, going, okay, so when can I get back to football or wrestling? And it was, I mean, that's all I ever thought of. I got injured before and I can always bounce back. I needed no time frame so that I could start working towards that. And really, that's where my mind was rolling because I knew the severity of it, but I didn't want to understand it. I didn't want to accept it. And so I remember doctor saying, I don't think you're going to be playing any contact sports ever. And it was like a truck just hit me. Like, what? Like, because remember, if you understand my story, I wasn't relevant to anybody unless I was good at something and I was good at sports. I became relevant because of sports. I got the grades and I worked it down my schoolwork because I couldn't get on the wrestling mat. I couldn't get on the football field. I didn't have a C in every class, not a C average, but a C in every class. And so I knew this is the only way I could play sports. So I did my work. I hated school. I didn't want to do it. And I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been because I was important. in sports. Now this guy's telling me, I don't know this guy, telling me I'm done. Man, it was bad. I mean, I got depressed. I mean, it was, I remember not talking, and I remember Bob Shamrock said to me, and I this thing that he said to me, I used my whole life. But he said, "Do you believe that God would have brought you this far in order to walk away from you now?" And I remember thinking to myself, he's right. Like, wait a minute. This guy doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I'm willing to do. To do whatever I need to get to where I want to go. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I'm willing to do. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, it's not over. And even though, and I've got pictures of this where I was strapped into this what they called a halo, where bolts were in my head. I had 4 of them screwed into my skull, and then there was this thing that strapped that came down to my chest plate, so it didn't allow me. My whole upper body, from my waist all the way up to my head, all moved at the same time because I couldn't turn shoulders, neck, or anything. It all moved, and I had to learn how to walk all over again because my balance was off because I had no head to balance. And it was crazy. And I would say probably 3 to 4 years after that, and this is crazy because I can't really get into the journey and all that, but I was on the college football field, literally tackling people. Defensive captain, led the team in tackles. 4 years after this, it's crazy. I look back on it and just I don't understand it. I don't know how, but I just know that in my mind, I never doubted ever. When I walked onto the field, even after breaking my neck, I never slowed down. I hit people harder than I ever hit before, and never thought about hurting myself again, ever.
Wow, and everybody thought that it was only Vinny Pazienza who had the story with the halo around the head. There we go. Ken Shamrock was unfortunately doing it many years before. So
Well, it was
yeah,
this was in 1982.
yeah. I can't even fathom what you had to go through, but the comeback after that is more than sensational. I mean, like I said, there's so much detail to your life. It's ridiculous. Everything from working as a bouncer at college, which will come with its own anecdotes. But you were also taking part in tough man contests and street fights to get a few dollars. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was a couple of them where guys would throw their money on the hood of a car, and you go out back of a bar, and you go at it. And like I said, it wasn't like you hated the other guy. It's just you thought you were tougher than they were, and you just go out back and you prove it. And to me, those are the fun days, right? You will just be shooting you or stabbing you or getting jumped. Just went out back and you fought, and it was pure and it was fun. Obviously, some people got hurt, get to the hospital. I know I put a couple guys in the hospital, but it wasn't like you were going out there jumping somebody or bullying somebody. It was 2 guys that went out there and wanted to make some money, and they did it through fighting.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. So in 1992, you go to the Tokyo Dome and you beat a kickboxer called Dan Nakaya Nielsen in 45 seconds. And now, surely this must have been the springboard to you kind of getting your first bit of global recognition, and I guess maybe that financial recognition as well.
Yeah, I think at that point it kind of proved to not just the gym and the organization that I was fighting for that I was legit. Um, it also proved to the rest of the world that Ken Shamrock was coming, and that by me dominating somebody me going into that fight, nobody thought I had a chance because this guy was a well-known kickboxer, Muay Thai, dangerous, and I was a no-name. And he just recently knocked out one of our top guys, Fujiwara, with a knee. And so they put me in there to revenge him, and they believed in me, or they wouldn't have put me in there. But nobody else who didn't understand who we were and what we were capable of, nobody gave me a chance.
Yeah, well, whoever made those decisions kind of fell flat on their face. Ken Shamrock became Wayne Shamrock, Vince Torelli, Mr. Wrestling, you name it. It didn't really matter what name you were using. You were basically going through everyone like fire. Now, let's get on to the first UFC. I just want to remind those people who don't remember the first UFC what it was about. So it was no holds barred. There was no biting, no eye gouging. There was no mandatory gloves as well. There was no judges' scores. unlimited 5-minute rounds, which for the records for the very first UFC wasn't even needed because the longest bout was 4 minutes and everything else was about 2 minutes and under. So it was knockout, tap out, or corner stoppage indicated by a towel, but the referee could only halt a match if the corner jumped in. He had no ability to jump in. Now, I guess you have to remember here that Benny the Jet Urquidez, Peter Ertz, Dennis Alexio, Gene LaBelle, Ernesto Hus, and many, many others were invited to this tournament. And they all said, to hell with this. You got to be kidding. They were reading the brief. So who approached you for UFC 1? And what in the hell made you decide to go for it with all these crazy rules, you know?
Well, there were no rules, basically. I actually got a flyer from one of my students, Scott Bizak brought it to me. And when he brought it to me, I kind of pushed it back at him and said, dude, that's wrestling. And he looked at me and he said, no, no, no. And this is real. And I kind of laughed because it said no holds barred. And I was like, oh, that's wrestling. And he said, no, no, man, they got this guy who goes around and he challenges people and they want to put on this tournament where they style against style. And I was kind of like, oh, come on, let me see this. So I look at it. So I mean, it looks legit, like it says no holds barred, and that anything goes. And so I just kind of like, can't do that. Like, just can't do that. And so in my mind, it's not real, right? There's no way that this is going to happen in the United States. I mean, they have sanctioning bodies. I'm doing something in Japan, which is called pancreas, that they won't let you do here in the United States, and that's open hand striking. Let alone no holds barred, do whatever you want to do. So I just kind of brushed it off, but I went ahead and made the call. And I think it was Art Davies who I talked to. And I remember asking some questions, and basically he was saying the same thing. Listen, this is the real deal. You come in and do what you want. And I was like, even kick somebody. I mean, literally asked, even kick somebody when they're on the ground. He goes, yeah. He says, anything other than biting and eye gouging. And if they don't stop the fight, it's just fine, And I was just thinking, whatever. Like, you're not going to stop a fight when they pull somebody's eyeball out. It's like, come on. So it didn't seem real. But because I was a champion in Japan at the time, and I was actually defending my title, I think a week before this event was supposed to happen, something that was close to it. So I go over, I call Art, and I said, I'd like to do it. He said, well, let me see, because I told him what I was. I was in Japan, I was a champion. And, I'd like to jump in. And so he didn't jump in right away. So so he did his research, got off the phone, calls me back, said, you're in. I was like, okay, cool. But the whole time I'm thinking to myself, it's not going to happen. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I can't even get people to train with me here, let alone they're going to have some fight like this. Train with me to be able to fight over papers. There's just no gyms to do it. Like, and so I'm thinking, you're going to put on something that nobody even knows what it is. It's basically a street fight. No. So I go over, I defend my title. I remember I jump in a plane, we fly to Denver, Colorado. I mean, that's altitude, which we didn't take into consideration. It's definitely a lot higher. So we get there and get off the plane, and we go to this, photo op or whatever kind of thing they were doing, a press conference, and guys are hitting bags and doing all this stuff, showing off their stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't see anybody other than Gerard Godot who I know, right? I literally just know. I didn't even know Art Jefferson, even though I know he's a great boxer, but I didn't ever see him fight, so I didn't really even know him. But I heard he was, world champion, and so I'm thinking, okay, there's my competition. Not seeing Royce walking around in a gi, I was like, this guy's gonna get hurt. Literally walking around in his gi, I was just like, this kid's gonna get hurt. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, and I thought to myself, maybe this is gonna happen. Like, maybe this is real. And then all of a sudden, they come up and they literally announce, okay, we're having a rules meeting. And literally right then, I'm like, oh, okay. It's just as I started to think this thing was going to be real. All of a sudden, I'm like, okay, here we go. Rules meeting when it's supposed to be no rules. All right. Now, okay, here it comes. So we go into this room, sit down. I'm sitting in the middle, not in front, because I think I'm going to walk out. And I'm sitting there waiting to hear it. Like, okay, here's how it's going to be. The commission won't let us do this, so we're going to do this. And they start coming in and start talking about, okay, you can't tape your hands. And then it exploded. Zane Frazier jumps out. What are you talking about, man? I'm going to tape my hands. I got to protect my hands. And they're like, well, you can fight or not fight. It's up to you. But it's like, it's just confusing because we all signed up and said, supposed to be no rules. And then all of a sudden, we're sitting there being told, okay, now these guys that use their hands in their craft cannot wear tape on their hands, so they're punching, they don't hurt their hand. And now they're being told they can't do it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, why didn't you say this before? And then they said you can't, in which they were targeting me. I mean, obviously they knew who I was because they seen my tapes. They knew that I was the one that could challenge was because I knew the ground, nobody else did. And they basically took away my wrestling shoes, basically taking away my foundation. I didn't realize that until it was too late, but I said, whatever, I'll still kill him. It don't matter. The young, cocky attitude, not understanding how valuable, your grip is, especially if you've never done it before. Obviously, if you have, it's a different story. You understand where your feet go and how you position. But going in there and never doing it before was like slippery as ice. And so they did that. I said, no problem. We're just going to fight. And we get no choice. You either fight or we walk away. At this particular time, I knew that this was going to be what they said it was going to be. But we didn't really truly understand what it looked like. We understood, okay, no, we're going to do this. There's always that thing in everybody where there's this gentleman, because they're all professional players, except for Royce, who does this, they've been doing this for 50 years, right? Taking challenges like this. So they understand what was going on. Whereas the rest of us were all like, okay, no holds barred. None of us would really just walk up and just kick somebody or pull their hair or kneel in the groin or anything like that. It's just that you don't have that mentality until the first fight, where Gerard Godot basically said, okay, no holds barred. I want to do exactly what they say. And he just literally kicks this little guy in the face. That's when it was real. That's when it became okay. This is what it looks like. And to 90% of those guys that were in the locker room did not like it, did not like that. And for me, I felt comfortable. Like, okay, I know this. Like, I grew up with this. I get this. It's like I fight one guy, he just stabbed the shot. We're here. Okay. I felt comfortable. And so that's kind of how that build up of the very first one is very confusing because again we got thrown a lot of curveballs. There was no rules. Now all of a sudden there's rules. You can't wear certain things, and they threw a lot of guys for a loop because they've been practicing a certain way. And me, I just practiced what I was doing and just going to take that in there. But when they took my shoes away, I didn't understand. And if you watch when I tried to take Patrick Smith down the first one, I literally had a tight waist on me and I was slipping, trying to spin him around because I couldn't. And I tried to pick him up, how my feet were slipping. So it was really awkward. It was different. But it was set up and literally gave us all, myself included, a career. Even though this was a calling card for jujitsu and a self-defense art for their schools, which was brilliant, in my opinion, absolutely brilliant, and literally put all of us at a disadvantage with no rules, so-called no rules, no tape, no shoes, and then literally went out and actually put a show on. And it was like I said, I am so grateful, even though a lot of stuff went against us in that first one. I am so grateful that we were able to showcase this and then to be able to bring it to where it is now. Because without that, even though we were at a disadvantage, a lot of us, we would not have careers like we do today if we had not stepped up and did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people listening who've never actually watched UFC one, and I remember it at the time. I'm a micro fraction of a micro fraction of what you've done in martial arts, but at the time I'd been training in Kyokushin karate for a long time, and I used to spar with a guy called Michael Thompson, who was in the first K1, and I think Patrick Smith was in that as well. So we kind of knew the big names out there, many of whom had been invited to UFC one, and pretty much all of them said no, thank you. And so when you went in there and you pioneered that, it was basically a shot in the dark. And for people who haven't seen it, I highly recommend they go onto YouTube and have a look because you got guys in there weighing 500 pounds of all shapes and sizes. It's literally like the real blood sport movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme minus the Hollywood shine behind it. So now there's 8 of you in there. 8 of you had the guts. You beat Patrick Smith, and you lose the next fight, but there's a bit of controversy in it. You were up against the great Royce Gracie. Talk to me about that fight.
Yeah, it was humbling because I remember seeing him in the press conference, and he was walking around with his gi, and I just remember kind of laughing, like, does this kid know what he's getting into? Like, he looked young, he was small. I mean, like, I think he was 180 pounds or something. I know he listed as 165, but he was more like probably 180, 185. I think I was the light. I was 198, I believe. So we were the two lightest guys in the tournament. But when I saw him, I kind of chuckled a little bit, like, dude, you gotta wake up. And then to be humble like that, like literally, I went in and beat Patrick Smith, what I thought was probably the second toughest guy there, behind Gerard Rideau. And so I felt like after I got him, I didn't know who I was fighting. I know they switched the card around like 7 times. Nobody knew who they were fighting. And then I remember fighting Patrick. I go back to the locker room, and I remember I brought a bunch of different trunks, and I didn't even have time to change. I mean, I literally got back there, and they said, "You're up." And Hoist had actually fought and had time to rest. So I remember thinking, okay, no problem, man. It was short. We'll go in and go again. And I remember going in there, and I was confident. I mean, just literally just going, I'm going to win this thing. Like, there's no way Gerard could beat him. I'll take him down and I'll submit him. He's got no ground game. And Hoist, and I'm like, I'll just beat this guy up. And so I remember going in there, and he shoots on me, and I'm spinning around. And whenever the next thing I know, I'm like, he's got my side. And I'm like, I just rolled through something, and literally, I tried to grab a heel, and my feet were slipping because I was trying to catch the carpet or the mat to be able to leverage it so I could push him away and get the heel, but my feet keep slipping. The next thing I know, I realize I can't get it, and so I roll through. As I roll through, he lives up into the side of me, and I'm like, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and just tuck it, grab his arm, and tuck and roll him. Well, the next thing I know, I got this gi wrapped around my neck, and I feel my air being choked up, and I'm going, how's he doing it? Like, literally, all this is going through my head. So I reach up to go to pull his arm off, and I can't get his arm. I don't know where his arm is. I feel material. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't breathe. Like, and I can get, I mean, when it comes to a choke, I was always pretty strong, and I'm pretty claustrophobic. So I got supernatural strength when it comes to getting those positions. I just, I get out of it. Okay, I'm big and strong now. And next thing I know, I can't grab anything. I can't pull anything. It's a rope, like literally around my neck. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit. And next thing you know, I tap. I'm not, I mean, I'm not stupid either. I know that you don't want to get hurt and not be able to continue, but I've always been able to get out of stuff, and I just couldn't get out of that. And I never had seen that before. And I remember thinking to myself, I was sitting there, and I just tapped. I just literally tapped to this guy, and it was humbling. And I remember sitting there, and I was thinking to myself, that I can't believe I just tapped. And I was so discouraged. And I remember telling myself, it's never going to happen again. And when I say that, I don't say it lightly, but if you look at my career, it never happened again. I never got submitted again in the UFC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, coming back to the depth of your life and the detail, it's just sensational. We've already flown past over 40 minutes here, and I've still got a few more questions to take a liberty here. But I mean, you go through UFC 3, you start smashing everyone up on that one, and then you move on to number 5, and then you got to number 6. You beat you beat Dan the Beast 7 to become the UFC Super Fight Champion, the first one of that. Just a quick question: if a modern day Tyson Fury had stepped into the octagon with Ken Shamrock back in the day, how long would that fight have lasted?
I got the utmost respect for Tyson Fury, and I think that if it's a bare knuckle fight and a stand up, he's probably going to win. I'll give him a fight, but he's probably going to win. But when it comes to what I do, which is fighting, literally, I'm going to win because he doesn't have the skill sets that I have when it comes to being able to get somebody on the ground. And I've always been able to fight guys that were much bigger than me, and I do better against guys that are bigger because I have the same strength or even stronger, but I move faster and I'm better condition. But yeah, in his world, yeah, he's game. He's probably gonna beat me. But if he's in my world, it's my game.
Very, very humble and balanced answer there. UFC 7, you beat Oleg Taktarov, who, if people don't know him, people don't realize he was a damn good fighter before he started hitting the big screen and taking part in Bad Boys and all the other movies. Which leads me on to a quick question for you. How come that never became a route for you? You had the looks, you had the physique, you had the pedigree behind you. Surely you were ready for starring in films.
I did a few small ones, but I could not. I'm one of those guys that need to be doing something. I need excitement. I need to be challenged. And I didn't feel like when I did a few of those, it felt like there was just a lot of sitting around. There's a lot of shooting the same angles, same positions. You do hours of one spot, and it just felt repetitious and just boring. And so it never really excited me. And but I hats off to those guys that have the patience to do that. But I'm not built that way. I never have been. Just
Yeah.
like commentary. Like I done commentary, and I probably could have gone on in a career at it. But it's not enough excitement for me. I can't just sit there and talk about things. So I never did. I never did went in that direction. I just kind of went to places where I could stay active, busy, and more involved.
Well, talking of excitement, you get into WWF, which now is known as WWE. So you're mixing with the likes of Dwayne Johnson, Vince McMahon, The Undertaker, and a countless group of other people in there. What we need to know is how much was staged and how much is genuine fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it's all entertainment, all of it. But what I always try to get people to understand that the things they're doing in there, going from the top rope, getting hit with chairs, getting kicked, getting punched, you have to know how to take them because they're coming, right? And sometimes you get tatered, and it's just part of the business. A lot of people, I just sustained more damage in pro wrestling than I ever did in fighting because I had to give my body to other people, and sometimes they didn't. They weren't nice, not on purpose. It's just the nature of the business. But I just, like I said, I just need people to understand it's a grind and it's brutal. And it's so hard on your body to continue to keep taking bumps like that because those bumps are real. You're going from standing up and hitting that ground and hard. And so there's nothing fake about that. Obviously the endings and some of the spots and all that stuff, you can tell it's entertainment. But these guys do put their bodies through a very, very physical and very demanding regimen. So nothing but respect for what these guys
Yeah.
are doing. But like I said, and even on the other hand, I also want to make sure that wrestling fans understand too, because I get it all the time. Well, how did this guy do this? And they just think that, these guys could just go on MMA. Trust me, it doesn't work that way because if it did, they'd be doing it. Just like guys now going from fighting into the world of wrestling, it's not easy. And then they're having wrestlers going into fighting, it's even harder because it's more demanding when you don't know how to do it and you go into an MMA fight, you're going to get hurt. So that's why you don't see, other than myself, I think Dan Severn and Brock Lesnar, we're the only ones that went from wrestling into MMA and not the other way around because it is, I believe, in my opinion, easier to go from not easy because it's difficult, but you'll see more people go from wrestling into MMA than you will wrestling into MMA because you get beat up. You'll see a lot more going from MMA into wrestling because you can learn without getting destroyed. Whereas if you're a wrestler going in MMA, you're going to get destroyed while you're learning.
Yeah, well, there's one thing about yourself. You've never had any issues with getting in there and fighting, and certainly was what you carried on doing afterwards. You got into Pride, and you had some epic feuds with Don Fry. You're both cut from a very similar cloth, roughly the same sort of size, and the battles you had in there. But I had to quickly watch one before we started the call, and I was thinking to myself, "Good God, it's." I think lesser mortals would have gone after a few minutes. But how highly did you rate your battles with you and Don?
Yeah, Dawn was a class act. We had our differences. We built the fight. We did what we needed to do to go in and fight. Obviously, that's just the way I was, and he was the same way. But afterwards, we truly do respect one another. We put our differences that we had before the fight aside because we fought, and that's how we settle things. And so when that fight was over, our beef was over. And so we're friends, and I respect him, what he's been able to do. I don't agree with the decision, but hey, I mean, I'm a fighter. Of course I don't. But I truly believe that Don was one of the great fighters, one of the great entertainers, along with myself. So it was a privilege to get in a ring with him and be able to share the ring with him and be able to have stories.
Brilliant, very humble indeed. Your very final fight. I'm jumping forward here. Many years and many episodes of the incredible life of Ken Shamrock. But moving forward to 2016, you and Royce Gracie decide to have what would then be your last fight. Why did the pair of you in your 50s decide to take on this fight?
It was an opportunity. I was still fighting, and I felt like I wanted to fight guys that, I'm not going to fight number one contenders. I mean, obviously, I'm a little long in the tooth. So I just felt like I wanted to fight fights that it made sense and ones that I wanted. And he was one of the ones that I wanted. I felt like, the second fight we had, he didn't give me the respect that I deserved because he got beat, period. And he just didn't want it. He didn't want to give me that credit. And so I felt like, okay, let's do it again. Let's make this happen and let's finally decide, because I believe I beat your ass and shut you down, and obviously sat in your wheelhouse and challenged you to beat me, and you didn't, and I put a beating on you. And a lot of people, when in that fight, it's hard for people to understand what was going on in that fight because of the lack of knowledge I had, and his knowledge that he had a ton of it. So I had to be very, very methodical in my strategies on beating him down, working his body, pressure on his stomach, headbutting, and all these little things that I did all the way through that fight methodically to wear him down to be able to finish him. And I was getting close. Unfortunately, we didn't get the time limit that I thought we were going to get, which was no time limit. They threw one in. It was the very first one they ever put in, which was bad timing for me because I felt like I had him where I wanted him. And unfortunately, it didn't work. But other than that, I thought I put a pretty good beating on him. That didn't work out. I felt like, okay, you skip the third one. I'm going to go ahead and just put him away. And I really believed I could have. I just don't believe he had the ability to stop me. That was with the more knowledge that I had gained over the years from that second one and where we were at now. There was no way that he was going to have the advantage over me with the skill sets. And unfortunately, um, I'm not sure how and why that was not called in a forfeit on his part, or however you want to call it, disqualification for kneeing me in the groin. Because I think everybody in the audience and on TV saw that it was a groin shot, and unfortunately, it was not called that. And I felt like again that I was screwed over and taken advantage of, with a clear and obvious shot to the groin. I just still to this day do not understand it.
That's I totally get exactly where you're coming from on that. On the note of opponents, are there any opponents that you had genuine hate for?
No, I hate's a strong word, and I don't hate anyone. I mean, shoot, looking at where I came from and the things I've done wrong, I can't hate anybody. I think everybody has their times of doing things wrong, and people do people wrong, and you got to give everybody an opportunity to be able to, forgive them and allow them to try to be better people. Hate is a strong word, and trying to hate somebody, it just takes away any energy that you have for the world. So I just stay away from that. There's people that rub me wrong. Obviously, that's just the way it is. But you try to find what you can in it, and focus on the things that are good.
What a great answer. Um, Last couple of questions here. So, what would you say the thing that makes you most proud that you've done in your life?
When I look back on it, I think that being able to, overcome so much, and being able to raise a family with my kids who now have their kids. Obviously, there's a lot of things being a parent that, you look back on, man, we should have done that differently. But I think as long as you keep doing it out of love, you're always going to be able to go back and justify the decisions that you make, even though they may have been wrong at the time. It was done out of love and protection. It may not be the right one in that moment, but at least you've done it for the right reason. So I think anything I look back on as parenting and as a husband, I feel like anything I've done has been out of love and protection. So I really believe from where I came from as a kid and as a person, what I've overcome and become what I am today is probably my greatest feat.
Amazing. What a fantastic answer. Ken, I've taken more than enough of your time. So the very final question is going to be this. You're knocking on 60 years old. Like, are you drinking from the fountain of youth or something? Because you're looking in incredible shape. How does Ken Shamrock keep himself in this sort of shape?
Yeah, I just, maintenance. I don't do, 24/7 of training. I train probably twice a week, and then do some cardio. But yeah, not rigorous because I put in a lot of work early on, and so my body responds to a few days a week of training, and I feel good. I'm not tired because I'm trying to do too much. So no, it's just really just being able to just maintain what I've already built and be comfortable.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I know that everyone in the United Kingdom is going to be really enjoying to look forward to this interview and the time that you've given towards it and the detail. So once again, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.